let's get into some news, some big news. And I think this is big news because if you've listened to this show at all for the, 2 years we've been working together, if there's anything like I appreciate what it means for every single NFL team to have fat guys they can trust up front. I feel like every week we talk about the fact that there aren't 32 starting caliber left tackles, right tackles, offensive linemen across the board in the NFL. So I think there's substantial news that we get a big retirement. And I don't know that a lot of people saw this coming, but Frank Ragnow retires at 29 years old to prioritize his health. So you have the starting center of the Detroit Lions deciding he's going to pull out for health reasons. And look, Frank, let's start with that. I think we're going to see more and more an understanding from play. Like when you start making the money that these guys can make from day one, the need to play until you're 35 doesn't exist for every player. For some guys, you got to look around and say, okay, I've made generational wealth. Now I just want to sit back and appreciate my family. I think that this is, people want to make it a statement about health and safety for the league. I think this is a statement about the fact that, frankly, as players, you're richer than you ever used to be. You have a better understanding of health and safety than you ever used to have. The love of the game isn't always the same for every player. You start to weigh all of these things, and I think it makes sense that we see guys that are on the other side, this side of 30, saying, hey, man, I don't want to keep doing this to myself.
Yeah, and it's not just, Frank Ragnow playing, I think he played 8 years in the NFL, maybe 7, maybe 9. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's not just those years. It's the college years. It's high school. You've probably been playing football since you were 8 years old to get to this point. So there's a lot of wear and tear on your body. And yeah, hats off to him for recognizing, hey, I've made a lot of money. I still feel pretty good. I don't want to just keep going down this road. And it had to be a tough decision because, he's, you can make the old school Lions joke about, guys stepping away because they're losing too much, Barry, Calvin, all that. But this isn't you're part of a team that might make some history as the first Super Bowl champion, first team to go to a Super Bowl in Lions history. To walk away from that possibility, I assume it had to be tough for him. But, like you said, he prioritized his health, his family, walking away when you still can. And I think there's something to be said about that. And yeah, I do think you're going to see a lot more guys doing this. It's just, you get to a point where it's, you see other guys, you hang around too long, you play too long, you're having trouble walking when you're 50 years old. And that's not exactly the life you want to live. So hats off to Frank Ragnow for a great, great career. And getting to your point of, this being a big loss, like Frank Ragnow, if you trust Pro Football Focus's grades, he was the second best center in the NFL last year. The Lions, for all the glitz and glamour of Aiden Hutchinson and Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, the strength of their team was the offensive line, period. Flat out. They had the best offensive line in football, one of the better offensive lines I've ever seen, really. They're just totally dominant up front. Well, you take away the center, which is a huge deal. Center is massively important. And also, a little more under the radar, Kevin Zeitler, he's not there anymore. He was their guard last year. So now you're replacing 2 out of your 5 guys with unproven. The guy stepping in as center for the Lions might be their second-round pick, rookie. That's tough to replace a 4-time Pro Bowler. This is a big loss for the Lions. And it's one of those things where the Lions are clearly still a Super Bowl contender, right? But you think about, can they actually win a Super Bowl? Well, you lose your offensive coordinator, you lose your defensive coordinator. Everybody's a year older. You're going to have the same injury luck you had. They have a tougher schedule. They have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL this year. 2/5 of your offensive line is gone from last year. It's just a little erosions that, take you from, hey, we're 15-2, number 1 seed in the NFC, to maybe, okay, we're 11-6 and the 3 seed in the NFC. This is small things that happen. Not this huge catastrophic thing that happens to the Lions, but it just chips away a little bit and a little bit. And all of a sudden you look up and you say, that's how our Super Bowl window ended.
When the Cowboys were actually worth a damn as a football team, they had a great offensic line. The Eagles last year.
Which one? Cowboys have had a couple great offensive lines. The 90s and then the 2008 era Cowboys were pretty great on the offensive line too.
Right, look at the Eagles last year.
Yeah.
Offensive line was absolutely incredible. You mentioned it, the Lions, offensive line. At some point, the foundation of your house has to be built the right way before you can start worrying about, what the windows look like and what some of the window dressing looks like on a house. And that's what an offensive line is. And so, to me, when you have 2 out of 5 guys that you're suddenly replacing, now you have to ask yourself how you're replacing them. The best case scenario for Lions fans is that they do have, an immediate, you drafted Tate in the Rutledge in the second round to step in and be your starter. That's your best case scenario. Because otherwise, if you start shifting things around, and this is what, when you talk to guys that played offensive line in the NFL, I've always looked at it and said my number one objective when it comes to offensive line breakdowns is to have a lot of friends that played at the highest possible level that can help me break it down. Because what do I know at 5'9" and 160 pounds? I know nothing about being an offensive lineman. When you talk to offensive linemen and when you do that study portion of the tape, the one thing they'll tell you is that the worst case scenario is a revolving door. Because if you're taking a guy from left side to right side and then you're moving this guy over here, every single different change you make weakens the chain link in front of the quarterback. And that has to be a concern. And now this just adds another concern to the Lions. Like, look, I want the Lions to win a Super Bowl for the city of Detroit, for NFL fans, for every fan base that's ever suffered. The Lions winning is this ultimate, my God, feel-good story that every one of us can hang our hat on and say, we could beat Detroit. But my God, the number of things they're now being asked to replace this year, and we're just presuming that it happens. Every one of these changes makes me more and more cautious to have any faith in the Lions' ability to get to a Super Bowl this year, because getting to a Super Bowl, Frank, is about the little things. It's lucky in the right places and the little minutia. When you're replacing your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, a bunch of position coaches across the board, now 2/5 of your offensive line, like, at what point did the question stop for the Lions? It feels like as much as this is right smack in the middle of their window they got to take advantage of, this year's going to be challenging in my mind for Detroit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that they played the toughest division of football. Like, all three of the other teams are playoff caliber teams that the Bears come along. So yeah, all of a sudden it just gets tougher. Everything. That's why these Super Bowl windows, you can't let opportunities pass. You can't blow the lead to the 49ers NFC Championship game. You can't let the Commanders come in and just have the day of their lives and beat you at home when you're 2 home wins away from a Super Bowl. So again, I'm rooting for the Lions because I think it would just be one of the most unbelievable, great stories that I've covered, in all these years covering the NFL. The Lions winning a Super Bowl would be awesome with this really, really likable team. But it gets harder. It gets harder every year. And I can't even sit here and tell you for sure that the Lions are going to win their division. Like, I don't know. Like, the Packers are really, really good.
Wait. Stick there for a second. If you had to bet your house today, we're going to do a lot of degenerates today. If you had to bet your house today on the Lions or the field in the NFC North, who would you bet?
I think I'd take the Lions still, because there's flaws in the other teams, right? Like, but there's flaws in the Lions now too. So I think I'd take the Lions. I was pretty confident last year. Yeah, Lions are going to win that division. Now I'm like, well, I think the Lions. Like, that's the difference. When you lose a 4-time Pro Bowl center, like, when stuff like when you lose an offensive genius who was your offensive coordinator and you led the league in points last year. When you have, I believe it's the second toughest schedule in the NFL projected. I mean, these are the things that kind of add up. And I'm not saying the Lions can't win a Super Bowl. They certainly can. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL still. There's no question about that. They're going to get their defense healthy, but it just, I worry for, I have Lions fans, friends, and I worry that they're going to, 10 years down the road, they're going to be looking back at those 2 playoff games and saying, man, that was it. That was our shot. And we let it pass. I mean, this is how quick it could change in the NFL. Who would you take, Lions or the field?
I would take the field. I'll take the field.
Okay. It's reasonable.
And here's the other thing. Remember a few years ago, now the AFC West looks like it's going to be very good. But a few years ago, everybody was sitting there saying, oh man, the AFC West is going to be great. And it turned out to be a year where everybody but the Chiefs stunk. Yeah. Right. Like, we all remember that. I'm not so sure I'm ready to buy the NFC North hype this year to the same level as anybody else, if I'm being fair about the buts that every team has. Like, it is easy for me to say, okay, the Lions are great. Yeah, but they're replacing 2 coordinators, part of their offensive line. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, and a bunch of positional coaches. The Vikings are going to be great. Yeah, but we have no idea what J.J. McCarthy actually looks like on the field. Like, none. We have zero proof of concept on a rookie quarterback, essentially, when it comes to the fact that we haven't seen him play any meaningful football. So it's easy for me to say, I've been long on the are we sure about Jordan Love train? Yeah. And so now I'm sitting there saying, I mean, maybe with the Packers. And then it's super easy for me to say Ben Johnson's never been a head coach before. We don't know if all of this is going to gel together for the Bears. Like, it just, I don't know. Like, yes, I could easily see where all 4 of those teams are epic, incredible, and it's absolutely a joy to watch every Sunday. I could also see where this division sort of implodes and all of these teams are sitting here saying, man, this was supposed to be our year. Like, I think there's a pretty easy case. If you're a Packers fan, it's easy to fault the rest of the division. If you're a Bears fan, it's easy to fault the rest of the division. At some point, you got to put that mirror at yourself and realize that if every single fan base within a division can find a massive reason that they don't think the other teams are going to be great, I think there is a little bit of a pause for concern that the NFC North might be getting a little bit more praise right now than it deserves.
Very possible. Like you said, there's reasons to doubt all four teams. The Lions' floor is very high. Like, I don't think this team's going to go 9-8 or anything like that. Like, unless everything falls apart, like injury wise. But yes, there's flaws in every team. There's stuff you could say, like the Packers don't really have a lot of true high-end blue chip guys. They got a lot of very, very good players and maybe not any great players. And they might just be that good enough team, right? They can't get over the hump against the Lions. And the Vikings, a huge change. I mean, they came from nowhere last year. Remember, we were so down on the Vikings before last year. They came from nowhere to win 14 games. Like, that, there's no guarantee they repeat that. And then the Bears we haven't seen Caleb do it. We haven't seen Ben Johnson do it, for that matter. And we don't know that their defense is any good either. So, yeah, a lot of questions in the NFC North. But I still think, at the end of the day, that's the best division of football. Unless the Raiders get really good and the AFC West is pretty strong. That's the other contender, I guess. I don't think the AFC North, because the Browns stink. But, yeah, I still think all those NFC North teams are going to be very good and put a lot of pressure on the Lions this year. I just don't see the odds of the Lions going 15-2 against that schedule are very, very low. I mean, it's 15-2 has happened, or 15 wins in a regular season happened, I believe, 9 times. Like, it was a historically really, really good Lions team last year. I don't think they repeat that. And then what? And then you're going on the road in Philly for AFC Championship game, or you're going on the road to, who knows? I love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe they're the number 2 seed because they have a much easier schedule. You're going on the road in a divisional round. Like, the opportunity that was presented to them last year was rare and it was special. And you just lost to the Commanders, and that stinks. You caught a hot team at the wrong time, and that's really going to be bothersome to the Lions for a long time, unless they get over the hump and win that Super Bowl.
Future episode, we're going to have to go through and make a case for what division is going to be the best or not the best in football this year. It could be interesting. Another piece
not
of
the AFC South, by the way, not the AFC South. We can cross them off.
Any division with the word South in it, we can just cross off. Like, that division is out. Another interesting piece of news to me was this trade rumor that's happening between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins for Jonnu Smith. Smith wants a new contract. Jonnu just had a massive year with the Miami Dolphins. The Steelers looking to be aggressive. Adam Schefter is reporting the Steelers are not expected to trade for him. But here's the thing that blew my mind, Frank. Everybody will sit here and say, well, Jonnu played with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was the offensive coordinator for the Titans as well. I watched those teams. Jonnu Smith was good, not great. Like, Jonnu Smith was better when he wasn't with Arthur Smith than he was when he was with Arthur Smith. So this concept that there's going to be a reunion of sorts and Arthur wants Jonnu because he knows what a great player is. I guess my question is, why did Jonnu Smith have to go to Miami to have the best year of his career? Why do you have to get away from Arthur Smith to have the best year of his career? Like, I think it's a little stunning that we're just presuming that this is a, reuniting and it feels so good moment, because I don't see it.
Yeah, it was one of those weird trade rumors where I'm like, what party benefits from this? I don't think Jonnu Smith would be better off with the Steelers, who already have Pat Freiermuth, by the way, a pretty good tight end. Like, they're not hurting a tight end by any means. You're just going to run a bunch of 2 tight end personnel. I don't think that's good in a modern NFL. But they don't have any receivers, so maybe. I don't see it from the Steelers aspect. I don't see it from Jonnu Smith's point. And then the Dolphins, it's like, well, you're just going to, like, it just seems like the ship is sinking so quickly in Miami. Like, but I will say this. It's almost like Jonnu Smith last year almost held back the Dolphins offense. So let me explain. You go back 2 years ago and they were this explosive down the field, big play offense. And then last year they relied weirdly on Jonnu Smith. Like, he was like the focal point of their offense for weeks. Like, and it's just like, and I don't know if that's because they just needed to get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly because they were worried about his health, or Tua himself was worried about his health. But there's no Jalen Waddle. There was no Tyreek Hill. It was just Jonnu Smith over and over and over again, and they weren't very good. Like, Jonnu himself had a really good year, and he was very productive. But I just, everything about that trade rumor was weird to me. Other than it's like, Well, yeah, the Dolphins, somebody wants to get paid. Well, we got to trade you now because we don't have the money for it. Like that's been kind of the MO for the Dolphins, who I'm just writing their preview. So I was just looking back at like where we thought they were 2 years ago. Whenever, like, if you just Google Dolphins greatest show on turf, there were a million people saying, yes, this is a great show on turf. This is 1999 Rams. Like, come on. Like, no. And now where we are 2 years later, the Dolphins, man, that whole thing seems to be falling apart really, really quickly. And I think the Jonnu Smith trade rumor is just another example of it. Like, Jonnu Smith had a really, really good season for you, and he wants more money. Now you got to trade him. Like, and they might not. And the reports are not really going to trade him. But it just kind of shows you where the Dolphins are right now. They don't seem to be building up. They seem to just be like floating in the middle of nowhere right now.
Doesn't it feel like I think it's a really fair point to look back 2 years ago. And the tone of the conversation was the Dolphins are about to take this next step and be one of the great teams in the AFC. And frankly, we did it with the Texans after 1 year, CJ. We did it with the Dolphins. And my buddy Mike Golick Jr. said to me years ago, and it's just been stuck in my head forever, if the Dolphins hadn't beaten the Broncos 70-0 in that game, how different would we have perceived their entire offense for the rest of that year? I think there's a really fair point here where if you just look back now at the Dolphins, they feel like they're a hell of a lot closer to being ripped apart and just starting over than they do to where we thought they were going to be 2 years ago. Like, they're closer to a rebuild than they are to a championship. They got 2 years this year and one more year before there's an out into his contract. I'm not sure that, Mike McDaniel at this point is, I don't know. I don't know if I certainly looked amazing in the beginning. And it's like, I want every head coach to have offenses that are this creative. And now I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't know. Where there's smoke, there's fire. You hear so much about players not really digging it, not respecting them, and people being late and people not showing up. And then you have health issues. And now you have trade rumors. Like, it just feels like the Dolphins are on the edge of an implosion. And frankly, right now, if we're predicting in a year what we're going to see from the Dolphins, I would be more surprised if we're talking about the Dolphins in a year going on a playoff run than I would be if we're talking about the Dolphins firing everybody and bringing in a new head coach and an entire new regime.
You know what was the warning sign that we all kind of ignored or glossed over anyway? And I thought about this when I'm writing a preview. So I'm looking back. I'm studying this team. A couple years ago, Vic Fangio was there. Vic Fangio was one of the great coordinators of this era. He was there 1 year. The defense wasn't great. And then after the year, they got rid of him. Just kind of like, okay, we're firing you, Vic. We're parting ways, whatever you want to call it. The players all celebrated. And after that, it was like, the players didn't like him. He didn't like his style, blah, blah, blah. What happens to Vic Fangio? He goes on to the Philadelphia Eagles. He makes the best defense in the NFL and wins a Super Bowl ring. And all those guys Super Bowl week. I mean, we talked to a bunch of the Eagles guys that week. They all said, we love Vic. He's a great, yes, he's a hard coach to play for. He's demanding, but he gets the best out of us. And now you look back at what happened to Vic Fangio since then? What's happened to Dolphins since then and their culture issues? And you wonder, do these Dolphins care about winning that much? Because they just ran off one of the best, maybe the best defense coordinator in the NFL. One of the, him, Spagnuolo, there's a few names. They ran him off, basically. Because why? Because he was hard on them? Like, I guarantee you the Dolphins defense would be better today with Vic Fangio than without him. So you look back at that moment and you say, maybe this Dolphins group just doesn't have it. Right? Like, you ran off Vic Fangio. You didn't want to play for Vic Fangio. Well, Vic Fangio's a ring now. Like, maybe that's the problem with the Dolphins, that they're just a little too comfortable. And there were a lot of culture issues around Mike McDaniel and guys getting fined and still not showing up to meetings on time. And it kind of checks out when you look at how Vic Fangio was kind of unceremoniously dumped by that team and then went on to win a Super Bowl. It kind of checks out, right? It kind of fits.
Yeah.
It's on brand for the Dolphins at this point.
We have a lot to get into on the Steelers side of it, which we'll do later in the show because we have our Rise, Repeat, or Retreat on the AFC North. So we'll get into the Steelers there. I have another AFC North topic, but I do want to get, aside from that, a big piece of news. Trey Hendrickson willing to hold out? Are we buying, Frank, that, like, has it been so long since we saw somebody just say, screw it, I'm not going to play? Like, I mean, how long does a holdout go? What's it end? Like, I don't even know how that would work at this point. And let me be old man on the lawn for a second on my birthday. I remember that a time when holdouts were just standard. You saw them every year. It's like 2 or 3 guys.
I remember,
hold out.
Vincent Jackson held out like 10 weeks or something like that. A long time ago.
I mean, right. And I mean, hell, we used to see rookies holding out all the time and just, they want more money. They want their guarantee. Now it feels like holdouts are such a thing of the past that the modern fan is just dismissing this. But man, I don't know. If I'm Trey Hendrickson and I truly believe that I'm being undervalued, am I going to be the guy that sits back and says, hey, like, I mean, Josh Jacobs made it clear in recent interviews that he was prepared to sit all the way out until week 10 if that's what it was going to take for his contract situation. You think Trey Hendrickson would be willing to do that to the Bengals?
I think he might. I mean, what else? What other? He has no other leverage. And we did see it with Chris Jones 2 years ago. If you remember, he missed week 1. They lost to the Lions. They got it done. I mean, and then everybody's happy after that. The Chiefs go on to win a Super Bowl. But it's just weird standoff because I think the Bengals are just looking at this like, we don't want to pay you a long-term contract because you're over, more than 30 years old now. You're not as great as he is sacking the quarterback. He's not a Myles Garrett. He's not a TJ Watt. Like, he's very, very good, but he's not in that range. He's probably asking for money in that range. That's the problem, Max. Like, I mean, that kind of money. I don't think they want to pay him that. And I don't think they want to trade him either because they know their defense is not better without Trey Hendrickson, right? So it's just this standoff. And what can Trey Hendrickson do? Like, the only thing he can do is hold out. That's all he can do. And so I think maybe he does. Maybe this is just, hey, I've made a lot of money in the NFL. I'm not going to play for less than I'm worth. I'm going to watch them week 1, struggle on defense, and maybe they come to the table and say, you're right. Let's get a deal done that fits both of us. What other recourse does he have at this point?
I think the couple of factors that make this really possible is, to your point, Trey has made a little over, according to SpotTrack, he's made a little over $68 million in his NFL career. All right. So, number one, when anyone says, well, $20 million is a lot of money, $16 million is a lot of money. Okay. He's got $68 million in career earnings. If he's taking care of his money in any way, shape, or form, he and his family and his family's family never has to work again. So, like, number one, he's already got generational wealth. Number two, that 30 thing is a big deal because he's not going to get more signable over the course of the next couple of years. Like, no one's going to be more comfortable. Like, even if he goes out this year and sets a league record for most sacks, in a year we'll be sitting there saying, yeah, but now he's 31.
Yeah,
on the wrong side.
Nobody's signing him to a 5-year deal at that point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, this really is his window. Like, if he wants one more massive payday to play in the NFL, this is it. Like, if he doesn't get it this year, I don't see why somebody would give him what he's looking for in a year or 2 years. So, with knowing that it's not going to get more signable and knowing that he doesn't need the money, I'm presuming, I don't know his, I'm not his financial advisor, but he shouldn't need the money at this point. I do think you have the rare combination. Like, we always talked about why it was rare that Dak was able to hold the Cowboys' feet to the fire because he had the rare things in his contract. I think Trey is in the very rare situation where it's like, all right, if you don't think I'm worth it, I don't think your deal's worth it. I don't have to play football, and I'm never going to play for less than my value, and this is my last chance to get the value. That combination of events makes me think this is very real. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm scared as hell because Chris Jones' comp is a great one. Why did that deal get done? Because, my God, I mean, we all saw week 1. The Chiefs' defense was a shell of itself without Chris Jones. They needed Chris Jones. They went in, they caved and said, we got to figure out a way to get this done. If I'm Trey Hendrickson, I'm going to believe that the first time the Bengals step on the field and that defense gives up 40 points, doesn't get any sacks, I'm Trey. I'm going to be sitting there saying, how about now? You want to pay me now? And the number's not going to go down. It's only going to go up. So I think there's a real chance it happens.